The sound of the glass shattering on the marble echoed like a gunshot in that silent kitchen. The white milk spread quickly across the pristine floor, but what made anyone who saw the scene's blood run cold was not the mess. It was the terror on little Caleb's face. He was only 4 years old, a beautiful boy identical to his twin brother, Colton, who was in the chair beside him, paralyzed, holding his breath. Caleb did not move to clean it. He cowered. His small shoulders rose, his head lowered, waiting for the blow. And it came, but not as a loud slap. The malice there was silent. Gwendolen, the impeccable nanny in her white uniform, did not scream. She merely smiled, a cold smile that did not reach her eyes. She bent down, pretending to pick up the shards, but under the table, her hand with long red nails found Caleb's soft arm. She squeezed. It was a calculated, sadistic pinch on the inside of his arm, where his sleeve would later cover it. Caleb opened his mouth in a silent scream, tears overflowing, but no sound escaped. He knew that making a sound only made things worse. "You worthless child," Gwendolen whispered, her voice soft as venom. "You dirtied my floor. If you open your mouth to cry, you'll sleep in the utility closet tonight. Understood?" Caleb shook his head frantically. Terror choked his breath. Colton watched everything, frozen stiff, praying he wouldn't be next. Heavy footsteps sounded in the hallway. The master of the house, the magic of her deceit, was instantaneous. Gwendolen released the boy, stood up, and adopted an expression of maternal concern. When Harrison entered the kitchen, adjusting his tie, the scene was entirely different. "It's all right, my angel. It was just an accident. Auntie Gwendolen will clean it up," she said in a sweet voice, kneeling in the spilled milk. Harrison paused in the doorway, sighing. A widower, wealthy, but with the weight of the world on his shoulders. "What's wrong?" he asked, looking at his watch. "Nothing much, dear," Gwendolen replied, tossing the cloth into the sink. Caleb spilled the milk again. His motor skills seemed weak for his age. "Perhaps we need that neurologist." Harrison looked at his son. Caleb was trembling, rubbing his arm where Gwendolen's nail had left a mark. Harrison felt a pang in his chest. He wanted to hug him, but the stonewalling held him back. "Good morning, champions," Harrison forced a cheerful tone, bending down. "Isn't anyone going to say good morning to Dad?" Silence. A heavy silence. Caleb and Colton stared at their empty plates. Not even a glance. They looked like soulless dolls. Harrison's smile faded. 2 years, Gwendolen," he murmured, turning his back. 2 years without a word. It's like I'm a ghost in this house." Gwendolen touched his shoulder, invading his space with forced intimacy. "Patience, Harrison. They are special. Honestly, I think they have some serious cognitive issues. Defective. But don't worry, I'll bear this burden while you work." Harrison nodded, feeling guilt gnaw at him. He thought Gwendolen was a saint. "Thank you, Gwendolen. Is the agency sending the new cleaning lady today?" "Yes, they are, but I'll keep an eye on her. You know how those people are." Harrison kissed his son's heads, who flinched at his touch. He left heartbroken, without seeing Colton's pleading gaze. As soon as the door closed, Gwendolen showed her true colors. The idiotic father is gone. Now we'll see who's in charge. She slammed her hand on the table, startling the twins. "Breakfast is over. To your room now." And in silence, the boys ran hand in hand down the hallway, fleeing from the monster, their stomachs rumbling with hunger. 2 hours later, the intercom rang. It was Hazel, 27 years old, calloused hands, eyes that had seen much. She needed that job like she needed air, her sick mother at home, the electricity about to be cut off. Hazel swallowed her pride and entered the estate that resembled a cold castle. Gwendolen met her at the side entrance with utter disdain. "Are you Hazel?" Gwendolen blocked the entrance. "Yes, ma'am. The new day cleaner. It's not ma'am here. I am the housekeeper. You owe me obedience." The boss hates dirt and slow people. And most importantly, I don't want you bothering the children. They are problematic, disabled, and hate strangers. Understood? Understood. I like children, but I don't pay you to like them. I pay you to clean and be invisible. Hazel nodded, lowering her head. For my mother, she repeated mentally. Hazel began to work. The house smelled of artificial lavender. While cleaning the living room, she had the sensation of being watched. She stopped and looked around. Nothing. She began to hum an old song softly to calm herself. Rosemary, golden rosemary. It was then she saw. Behind a blue sofa, 2 tiny feet in grubby socks appeared. Hazel stopped. Her heart softened. She slowly knelt down. "Hello?" she whispered. The tiny feet retreated. Hazel did not insist. She remained there, singing to the sofa. "It was my love who told me so." Slowly, Colton's head appeared, enormous eyes filled with liquid terror. He was trembling as if he were cold. Hazel felt a physical tightness in her chest. That was not shyness, it was panic. She smiled, a warm smile full of sincerity. "Hello, little one. I'm Hazel. I came to clean so you can play. Do you like the song?" Colton did not answer, but he fixed his eyes on her. For the first time, someone was looking at him without anger or disgust. "My mother says this song is magic," Hazel winked conspiratorially. "It makes sadness go away." "Want to see?" She made a shadow bird with her hands on the floor. Colton's eyes widened, fascinated. The trembling stopped for a second. "What are you doing there?" Gwendolyn's scream shattered the moment. Colton vanished behind the sofa like a frightened animal. Hazel jumped. Gwendolyn stood in the doorway, eating a chocolate bar, her mouth smeared. "I told you not to bother him. Are you deaf?" "He was hiding. I just sang to calm him down." Gwendolyn saw the danger. The boy had calmed down with the cleaning lady. If they grew attached to someone else, her empire of fear would crumble. "Shut up!" Gwendolyn chewed her chocolate with an arrogant crunch. "Look at this." She opened the wrapper and deliberately crumbled the chocolate onto the expensive carpet. "Oops. It fell. Clean it up. And there's more. The grout in the powder room is filthy. I want you to clean it with this." She threw an old toothbrush at Hazel's feet. "With a toothbrush?" Hazel asked incredulously. "Yes, to learn your place, on your knees, now." Hazel felt tears sting her eyes, but bit her lip. She wouldn't give that woman the satisfaction. She bent down and began to gather the crumbs. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Caleb peeking from a crack in the hallway. He held his little arm close to his body. His sleeve rode up a little. Hazel saw it, a dark, purple bruise in the shape of 2 fingers on the child's wrist. Caleb saw that she saw him and ran. Hazel's stomach churned. That was a forceful grip. It was an adult hurting a small child. "There's something rotten in this house," Hazel thought, scrubbing the floor angrily. She might be poor, but she wasn't blind. Evening fell. The house was cast in shadow. Gwendolyn was watching a soap opera at maximum volume in her suite. And from the nursery, silence? No. Hazel, cleaning the hallway, heard it. Rumble. A loud stomach growl. From pain. It was 4:30. They hadn't eaten since breakfast. Hazel had seen the lunch plates return full to the kitchen. Gwendolyn had cleared everything away too quickly. Indignation overcame fear. Hazel went to the kitchen, opened the well-stocked refrigerator, and prepared 2 hearty sandwiches with cheese and ham. She hid them in her apron, along with 2 juices, and went to the boys' room. She entered slowly. The room was dark. Caleb and Colton were huddled in the corner, embracing each other. Upon seeing her, they covered their heads, expecting a shout. "It's me, Hazel," she whispered. "Shh, it's a secret." She sat on the floor. The scent of sadness in the room was palpable. She took out the sandwiches. "Who's hungry?" The boys' eyes lit up, but fear froze their movements. Was it a trap? Would it be spicy? Hazel understood. She took a big bite of the sandwich, chewed and swallowed, smiling. See? Delicious. No spice, no tricks, just love. The barrier broke. Caleb crawled desperately and grabbed the bread. Colton followed. They ate with a voracity that made Hazel want to cry. They swallowed almost without chewing. Slowly, my dear. No one will take it away. Hazel ran her hand over Colton's back. He stiffened but didn't pull away. Her hand was warm and protective. He relaxed his shoulders. When they finished, Caleb, the one with the bruised wrist, looked at Hazel. He took her calloused hand and pressed it against his cheek. He closed his eyes and let out a deep sigh of relief. A tear rolled down Hazel's face. "Oh, my God," she whispered, stroking his hair. "What does that witch do to you?" She swore right then and there. She wouldn't leave. Gwendolyn could humiliate her, but she wouldn't leave those children alone in the dark. Night fell. Harrison arrived early, his meeting cancelled. He walked in, expecting the usual tomb-like silence. He took off his jacket, exhausted. But he stopped. He froze. What was that sound? It came from upstairs, faint but unmistakable. A laugh, a joyful child's giggle. His heart pounded. He hadn't heard that in 2 years. He ascended the stairs softly, afraid it was a hallucination. The twins' door was ajar. A yellow light spilled out. Harrison peeked in. Hazel was on the floor. With a lamp turned towards the wall, she was making shadow puppets with her hands. And the giant rabbit said, "I'm going to get you," she narrated, making the shadow move. Caleb and Colton, in their pajamas, were sitting in front of her, alive, their eyes sparkling. Colton smiled a gap-toothed grin. Caleb clapped his hands, trying to imitate the shadow. Harrison felt a lump in his throat. He saw childhood reborn there, at the hands of a cleaning lady. He leaned his forehead against the doorframe, hidden, crying from relief and guilt. Suddenly, furious footsteps. Gwendolyn appeared in the hallway, dishevelled, without seeing Harrison in the shadows. "What the hell is this? Who told you to turn on that light?" she screamed, advancing towards the room. Harrison stepped out of the shadows and blocked her path with his body. Gwendolyn froze, pale. "Harrison," she stammered, her facade crumbling in terror. You arrived early. I came to see why this insolent woman is bothering the boys. She has no boundaries." Harrison raised his hand imperatively. "Shh," he hissed, his voice firm. "Shut up, Gwendolyn. Listen." From the room, another laugh came, and Hazel's voice, "Look at the alligator, chomp." "They are laughing, Gwendolyn. Did you hear? They are happy." Gwendolyn looked over his shoulder. She saw the connection. She saw the love. And what Harrison thought was concern on her face was pure hatred. That cleaning lady was a mortal threat. If Harrison discovered the truth, Gwendolyn would lose everything. Harrison looked back at the room, mesmerized. Gwendolyn retreated into the shadows, her cold, dead eyes fixed on Hazel's back. "Enjoy it while it lasts, you trash," she thought, venom dripping. "Tomorrow I'll finish you, and there will be nothing left." The next morning, the sky dawned leaden, grey and heavy, as if nature itself knew that peace in that estate had expired. Hazel arrived early, 10 minutes before her shift, her heart pounding against her ribs. The image of Colton's toothless smile and Caleb's silent claps from the previous night still warmed her soul, like a small ember on a cold night. But at the same time, the look of pure hatred Gwendolyn had given her in the hallway was a chilling warning. The war had begun, and Hazel knew that in that war she was the unarmed soldier. She entered through the side entrance, feeling the house's air conditioning hit her face, cold and impersonal. She changed clothes in the tiny, stuffy staff quarters, donning the grey uniform that seemed a size too large for her. She pulled her hair into a tight bun, taking a deep breath, trying to calm the tremor in her hands. "Just do your job, Hazel. Think about your mother. Think about the medicine. Don't cause trouble. she whispered to the stained mirror in the utility closet. But deep down, she knew it was impossible. How could she do her job, clean the floors, dust, and ignore two children suffering right there, just on the other side of the wall? How could she be blind when her heart saw everything? As soon as she stepped into the mudroom, ready to start her day, the door slammed shut behind her with calculated violence. Hazel jumped in fright, her hand flying to her chest, dropping the bottle of detergent she was holding. Gwendolen was leaning against the closed door, slowly turning the key in the lock. The click of the metal sounded like a revolver's trigger in that silence. The housekeeper wasn't wearing the good girl mask she used in front of Harrison. Her face was contorted, ugly, real. Her lips were pressed into a thin line of contempt. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" Gwendolen asked, her voice low, hissing, slithering through the room like a snake. She walked slowly toward Hazel, cornering her against the cold washing machine. I don't know what you're talking about, Ms. Vance," Hazel stammered, smelling Gwendolen's strong, sweet, expensive perfume, which seemed cloying and suffocating so early in the morning. "Miss Vance," Gwendolen scoffed, letting out a nasal laugh. "Stop with this humble act. I saw you last night. I saw the light on. Putting on a little show, playing shadow games, winning over the father through the children. That's your plan, isn't it? The poor cleaning lady, the trailer park princess who becomes the lady of the estate, classic gold digging. Do you think Harrison will look at a woman with your coarse hands?" Hazel's eyes widened, offended, feeling her face burn. "Heaven forbid. You're insane. I was just calming them down." The boy was crying, terrified. "I have a fiancé. I have my own life. I just want my salary to take care of my mother who is sick in bed. I don't want a rich husband. I want dignity." Gwendolen laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. She picked up an open bottle of bleach that was on the shelf. She started playing with it, tilting the clear liquid dangerously close to Hazel's grey uniform. The smell of chlorine rose, stinging the nose. "Listen here, you pauper. I've been in this house for 3 years. 3 years putting up with the grief of that boring, depressed widower Harrison. 3 years cleaning up the drool of those 2 mute, unbearable children. I've invested time here. I've invested my youth. I am their future mother. I am the future Mrs. Vance, and it won't be a cleaning lady smelling of laundry detergent and crowded buses who will ruin my future." Gwendolen moved closer, invading Hazel's personal space. Her face was inches away, her eyes glazed with ambition and malice. "If you try one more time to play the mother figure to them, if you try one more time to make Harrison smile, thinking you're the White Knight, I will make your life such a living hell that you'll beg to quit on your knees. I will have you accused of theft. I will have you accused of assault. I will have you leave here in handcuffs. Do you understand?" Hazel felt fear run cold down her spine. She knew women like Gwendolen had power. But then the image of Caleb's bruised wrist came to her mind. The image of their hunger, and a courage she didn't know she possessed, a lioness's courage, rose in her throat. "You can fire me, Ms. Vance. You can lie about me, but you cannot hurt those children. I saw the bruise on Caleb's arm. I saw your nail mark. I know what you do when no one is looking." The silence that followed was heavy, dense. Gwendolen's eyes narrowed into slits. For a second, Hazel thought she was going to get slapped. She braced herself, ready, but Gwendolen was smarter. Gwendolen didn't leave marks on adults who could speak. She smiled. "Ah, so we have a spy. A broom detective." Gwendolen took a step back. "You saw a bruise? Children fall, dear. Children get hurt playing. But you know what's curious? Clumsy housekeepers get hurt too. And most importantly, they get fired for incompetence and sloppiness." Gwendolen spun on her heels. In a swift, cruel and calculated move, she kicked the bucket of dirty water that Hazel had just prepared with disinfectant to clean the floor. The bucket tipped over. The grey water, full of suds and chemicals, splashed across the mudroom floor. It soaked Hazel's canvas shoes, drenched the hem of her pants, chilling her ankles. The water quickly ran into the impeccable hardwood hallway that led to the kitchen. "Oops!" Gwendolen exclaimed, feigning theatrical surprise, but with a devilish smile on her painted lips. "Look what you've done, Hazel. What a disaster. My goodness, you spilled everything in the hallway. Harrison hates wet floors. It's going to stain the imported wood. Clean it up now." Gwendolen stepped over the puddle, treading firmly, and shouted for Mrs. Higgins, who was in the pantry, to hear, "Watch out, everyone. The new cleaning lady is so clumsy. She made a mess everywhere. How incompetent." Gwendolen unlocked the door and strutted out, leaving a trail of her perfume and her malice. Hazel stood there still, with her feet wet and cold, feeling the dirty water soak into her sock. She looked at the spreading puddle, staining the floor. She felt an overwhelming urge to cry, to throw the rag on the floor, grab her bag, and leave, never to return. Why fight a war that wasn't hers? But then, through the crack of the open door, she saw a movement. It was Caleb. Little Caleb. He was walking down the hallway, heading towards the living room. He stopped when he saw the water. He looked at the mess. Then he raised his little eyes and looked at Hazel. He didn't smile. His face was serious. But discreetly, with his tiny hand close to his body, he raised his fingers and gave a quick little wave. A minuscule gesture. A gesture that said, "I saw it. I know it wasn't your fault." Hazel swallowed her tears. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She picked up the floor rag. "You won't win, witch," she whispered to herself, kneeling in the dirty water, ignoring the cold on her knees. "As long as I'm here, you won't touch them. For them, I'll endure your dirty water." The week dragged on with unbearable tension. It was a cold war within the estate. Gwendolen sabotaged Hazel in every tiny detail. She hid the special cleaning products, dirtied already clean bathrooms with shoe marks, and lost the pantry keys so Hazel couldn't get the snacks. But Hazel endured. She cleaned everything again 2-3 times without complaining, without giving Gwendolen the satisfaction of victory. Because every extra minute in the house, every unpaid overtime hour, was a minute she could watch the twins. And the twins, they were changing. It was subtle, like a rose growing in concrete. A shy smile when Hazel entered the living room. The way Colton touched his foot to hers when she washed the dishes, seeking human warmth. They still weren't speaking. The trauma was a tall, thick wall, but the fear was diminishing. They felt for the first time protected by an invisible shield named Hazel. On Thursday, the atmosphere grew even heavier. Harrison called to say he would be late. He had an important business dinner. Gwendolen, of course, was furious that she couldn't mooch dinner with him, her seduction plan thwarted once again, and, as always, she took out her frustration on the weakest links, the children. She locked the two of them in the playroom, a room that should have been colourful and happy, but which, under her rule, seemed like a beige, silent prison. Hazel, pretending she was going to clean the veranda windows, entered the playroom silently. Caleb was on the floor, bent over a sheet of paper, clutching crayons tightly. He was drawing with his tongue between his teeth, focused, urgent. "What are you doing, my love?" Hazel asked softly, wiping the glass, but with her eyes fixed on the boy. Caleb looked at the door, watching like a sentinel, and then turned the paper to Hazel. It wasn't a pretty drawing of a little house, sun and tree. It was a raw drawing, a cry for help in colours. There were 2 small stick figures, drawn with shaky lines, with huge blue tears streaming from their eyes. There was an angel with a broom in her hand, drawn with a crooked yellow halo. And there was a monster. A large figure, entirely painted black with sharp teeth and enormous red claws on its hands. The monster was holding the small figures by their necks. Hazel felt a shiver run through her entire body. The child was drawing his daily nightmare. "This angel! Is it me?" Hazel asked, her voice choked, her eyes welling up. Caleb nodded, his eyes shining with anticipation. He pointed at the black monster and made an ugly face full of fear and anger. Then he pointed his little finger at the closed door, indicating Gwendolen. "And this is Gwendolen," Hazel concluded, feeling a lump in her throat. Caleb grabbed the red crayon and angrily began to scribble over the monster on the paper. He scribbled hard, wanting to erase its existence, wanting to kill it on paper since he couldn't in real life. Suddenly the door opened. The click of the doorknob sounded like an explosion. Caleb tried to hide the drawing behind his back in a survival reflex, but Gwendolen had eagle eyes for others' misfortune. "What's that?" she asked, entering the room with heavy steps. "Hiding things. What did you steal, kid?" "He didn't steal anything." Hazel stepped forward, placing herself between Gwendolen and the child. "It's just a drawing. He was drawing. Let me see. Now." Gwendolen stepped forward and violently snatched the paper from Caleb's hand, crumpling the edge. Caleb flinched, covering his head, anticipating the slap that always came. Gwendolen looked at the drawing. Her eyes scanned the childish strokes. She saw the monster, she saw the claws, and she saw the angel with the broom. The message was clear even to an idiot. That wasn't just a scribble, that was evidence, a visual accusation. If Harrison saw that, if a psychologist saw that. Gwendolen's expression changed. Her face became icy, devoid of emotion. "What trash?" she said, her voice calm and full of contempt. "Ugly drawing. Daddy hates ugly things, Caleb. Do you want to make Daddy sad with this junk? Do you want Daddy to think you're stupid and can't draw?" Caleb shook his head negatively, his chin trembling, tears welling up in his eyes again. "So we'll do this, for Daddy's sake." Gwendolen, staring intently into the child's eyes, tore the drawing in half. "Reap!" The sound of the paper tearing was painful, as if it were tearing skin. Then she tore it again and again, shredding Caleb's hope into tiny pieces until it became confetti on the floor. "There! Trash belongs in the trash." She threw the pieces in Hazel's face. "And you, stop encouraging him to make a mess and waste paper. If I catch you wasting time again, I'll tell Harrison that you're teaching them to draw on the walls and destroy the house." Gwendolen left, slamming the door shut. Caleb burst into tears, but it was a different kind of cry this time. It wasn't just fear. It was frustration. It was pain. He had tried to speak in his own way and had been silenced once again. Hazel knelt down and hugged both of them tightly, crying along with them. "Don't cry," she whispered, holding them tight against her chest, feeling their little hearts beat erratically. The drawing tore, but the truth didn't. "I saw it, Caleb. I saw the drawing. I understood. And I promise, I won't forget." That night, the weather took a drastic turn. A violent, noisy summer storm broke over the city. Thunder made the double-paned windows of the estate rattle in their frames. Harrison called to say that the road was blocked by a fallen tree and that he would be staying at a hotel in the neighboring town. He wouldn't be coming home. It was the perfect scenario for disaster. The house was isolated. Hazel should have left at 6 in the evening. Her shift was over. But when she went to say goodbye to the children, she noticed something was wrong. Colton was too quiet, lying on the plush rug in the living room, wrapped in a blanket. His eyes were glazed over. When Hazel touched his forehead, she nearly burned her hand. The boy was burning up. "Oh my goodness, he's burning up with fever!" Hazel exclaimed, feeling panic rise. She ran to the kitchen, where Gwendolen was sitting, eating a slice of lemon pie, calmly scrolling on her phone. "Ms. Vance, Colton has a fever. It's very high. He's burning up. I think he needs to be taken to the hospital now, or given some medicine." Gwendolen didn't even look up. She continued chewing slowly. "Oh, big surprise. He always does this when it rains and there's thunder. It's just him acting out, an attention-seeking behavior because his father is away. Just leave him be, it'll pass." He just wants to be held. It's not him acting out. He's shivering with cold. He's delirious. His pulse is rapid, Hazel insisted, desperate, gesturing wildly. Listen here, girl. Gwendolyn stood up, wiping her mouth with a linen napkin. My nice nanny shift is over. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to my room. I'm going to lock the door, put on my headphones, and go to sleep. If that kid throws up on the rug, you clean it up tomorrow morning. And your time is up. Get out. I can't leave him like this. If his fever goes up any higher, he could have a seizure. Get out now! Gwendolyn yelled, losing her patience. Or I'll call estate security and tell them you're refusing to leave and threatening the family. That's grounds for termination for cause and a criminal record. Do you want to risk never finding another job and letting your mother die without medicine? Do you want to be arrested for trespassing? The threat was brutal and surgical. Hazel froze. The image of her sick mother depending on that salary came to mind. She needed the job. She couldn't be arrested. Gwendolyn smiled, victorious, seeing the doubt on the cleaning lady's face. She went up the stairs, entered her room, and turned the key with a loud, definitive click. Clack! Hazel picked up her old bag. She walked to the back door. The rain was falling heavily outside. The wind howled. She opened the door, felt the cold splash, and stopped. She looked back at the dark staircase. She imagined Colton burning with fever, alone in the dark, thirsty, afraid of the thunder. She imagined Caleb trying to help his brother without success, crying in silence. If I leave, I'm not a decent person, Hazel thought, her heart aching. If he has a seizure and dies, it's my fault. To hell with safety, to hell with the job, to hell with everything. Hazel closed the back door, but from the inside. She locked it. She took off her wet shoes so as not to make noise on the hardwood floor. She tiptoed up the stairs, like a ghost, like a clandestine guardian angel. She passed by the door to Gwendolyn's suite. The villain's muffled snoring could be heard. She was sleeping soundly, indifferent to the suffering next door. Hazel entered the boys' room. It was an oven. The heater was on full blast, another one of Gwendolyn's cruelties to suffocate the children, or just pure negligence. Colton was in bed, sweating profusely, moaning softly, tossing and turning. Caleb was sitting beside him, holding his brother's hand, his eyes wide with terror in the dark, lit only by flashes of lightning. When Caleb saw Hazel in the doorway, he let out such a profound sob of relief that his body went limp. He stretched out his little arms. Hazel took charge. She turned off the suffocating heater. She opened the window a crack to let the air circulate. She rushed to the bathroom and soaked towels in lukewarm water. Shh. Aunt Hazel is here. It'll be okay. I didn't leave. Hazel spent the entire night there. She applied compresses to Colton's forehead and armpits. She gave him water, drop by drop, with a small spoon. She sang softly as thunder boomed outside, muffling the sound of the storm with her sweet voice. She picked Caleb up and rocked him to sleep on her shoulder, swaying in the old nursing chair that sat in the corner. Around 3 a.m, the fever broke. The sweat cooled. Colton slept peacefully, breathing well. Hazel, exhausted, her back aching, sat in the armchair. She did not sleep. She stayed vigilant, like a lioness guarding her cubs. She knew that when the sun rose, hell awaited her. But looking at those 2 little angels breathing in peace, she knew any punishment would be worth it. Dawn brought the sun and the sound of Harrison's car engine arriving in the garage. Hazel woke with a start. She had dozed off in the armchair. She looked at the clock. 7 a.m. "My God, Harrison!" she whispered, panicking. She tried to get up to leave the room before she was seen, to pretend she had just arrived, but it was too late. Fate was cruel. The bedroom door opened. It wasn't Harrison. It was Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, already in her impeccable uniform, smelling freshly showered, stopped at the door. Upon seeing Hazel there, inside the room, in yesterday's rumpled clothes, beside the sleeping children, the villain's eyes gleamed, not with anger, but with opportunity. She had hit the jackpot of malice. She had the perfect weapon to destroy Hazel's reputation. "Well, well," Gwendolen whispered, a wide, wicked smile spreading across her face. "Did you spend the night here, invade the family's privacy? You dug your own grave, dear." Before Hazel could respond, Gwendolen turned and yelled into the hallway with a theatrically panicked voice worthy of an Oscar. "Harrison! Harrison! Get up here, quickly! For heaven's sake!" Hazel's blood ran cold. Her heart stopped. Harrison rushed up the stairs, still in his travel clothes, his tie loose. "What happened? Did something happen to the boys?" He entered the room, gasping, pale. Gwendolen pointed at Hazel, who was huddled in the armchair, looking startled and guilty. "Look at this, Harrison. I woke up and came to check on the boys, and she's here. She slept in here. She invaded their room at night." Harrison looked at Hazel, confused, trying to process the scene. "Hazel? What? Didn't you go home? What are you doing here?" Hazel opened her mouth to explain about the fever, but Gwendolen was quicker, venomous as a rattlesnake ready to strike. "I told her to leave yesterday at 6, Harrison. I saw her leave, but she must have come back, or hidden in the house like a thief." Gwendolen grabbed Harrison's arm and whispered loud enough for Hazel to hear. "Harrison, I warned you. She's obsessed. Look at this. She keeps smelling their clothes. She keeps watching them sleep. This isn't normal. This is sick. I'm afraid she might want to, I don't know, kidnap them." The accusation was so absurd, yet so well planted in the fertile ground of a widowed father's insecurity, that Harrison hesitated. He looked at Hazel with a mix of gratitude for her taking care of them and deep doubt for her having disobeyed and trespassed into his home. "Hazel, why did you stay?" Harrison asked, his voice harsh, serious. "Mr. Sterling, Colton, he was burning up with fever." Hazel stood up, her hands trembling, trying to defend herself. "Miss Vance said he was just being fussy and went to sleep. I couldn't leave him alone. I stayed up all night taking care of his fever. You can see he's in a cold sweat now, but his fever has gone down." Harrison looked at Colton in bed. The boy was sleeping soundly, his hair damp with sweat. He placed his hand on his son's forehead. It was cool. He looked at Gwendolen, seeking the truth. "Did he have a fever, Gwendolen?" Gwendolen didn't blink. She held his gaze. "Fever? Harrison, please. I took his temperature before he went to sleep. It was 96.8 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal. There was nothing wrong with him. This woman is inventing illnesses to make herself out to be a hero. It's Munchausen syndrome by proxy, Harrison. She invents danger to save the children and make you like her. It's dangerous. She could give them the wrong medicine." Harrison was caught in the crossfire. On one side, his trusted housekeeper of many years. On the other, the cleaning lady he had known for a week. Logic dictated trusting Gwendolen, but his instinct told him otherwise. But he was exhausted. The trip, the stress, the sleepless night. He had no energy to investigate. "Enough," Harrison said, massaging his temples, wishing the problem would disappear. "Hazel, I appreciate your concern, if it's true, but you cannot sleep here without permission. That is trespassing. If Gwendolen said he didn't have a fever, I need to trust her. She has taken care of them for years." "But Mr. Sterling, believe me," Hazel tried, tears in her eyes. "Please, Hazel, go home. Rest. I will think about whether you stay on. Come back early tomorrow and we will talk. And do not repeat this. Never again." It was a rude awakening. Hazel grabbed her purse. She looked at Gwendolen, who was smiling victoriously, hidden behind Harrison's shoulder. Gwendolen had won the battle. She had turned Hazel's greatest act of love into an act of criminal insanity. Hazel left the room with her head down, defeated. But before she left, She felt a small hand grasp the hem of her jeans. It was Caleb. He had woken up to the shouting. He looked at his father, then at Gwendolen, and then at Hazel. He didn't speak, but he squeezed Hazel's leg tightly and then slowly let go. It was a thank you, and it was a please don't give up on us. Hazel went downstairs crying with anger and helplessness. I'm not crazy, and I will prove that woman is a demon, even if it's the last thing I do. The day remained tense. Harrison tried to work from home, in his study, but concentration was impossible. Gwendolen, sensing she had gained ground, decided to play her final trump card. She began to feign. All afternoon, Gwendolen walked around the house sighing, touching her head, feigning dizziness. She left the children unattended, crying, banging on doors. Harrison from his study heard the chaos. He came out to see and found Gwendolen sitting on the sofa with a towel on her forehead. What is it now, Gwendolen? He asked, annoyed by the noise. Oh, Harrison, I think my blood pressure dropped, she said in a weak voice. This evening was so stressful with that woman showing up here. I have a migraine. I can't run after the boys. They're impossible today. I think they miss their crazy little friend. Harrison looked at his sons, who were sitting on the floor, sad, apathetic, looking at the door through which Hazel had left. The house was in chaos. Toys strewn about, lunch wasn't made. Harrison needed to finish an urgent report. He couldn't take care of them, and Gwendolen was sick. He swallowed his pride. He needed help, and the only person who calmed those boys was the crazy woman. All right, Gwendolen, you need to rest. Harrison sighed, defeated. And we need to get out of this toxic environment. I'm going to take you to dinner, to that Italian bistro you like, for you to relax. Gwendolen's eyes instantly lit up. Her migraine seemed to vanish from her eyes, though she maintained her composure. Dinner, just the two of them, it was a golden opportunity. Oh, Harrison, you're an angel. But what about the boys? I can't stand to be with them today. I'm going to call Hazel, Harrison said, picking up his cell phone. I'll ask her to come stay with them for 3 hours. I'll pay double. I know there was that issue this morning, but the children like her, and I need them to be calm. Gwendolen's smile froze. The world stopped for a second. Harrison was going to let her go out and put the obsessive, crazy woman in charge of the house, alone with the boys. If Hazel were left alone with them for hours without Gwendolen's constant supervision, who knew what those boys might say through gestures? They could show the drawings again. They could show the bruises. They could gain their father's complete trust. And worse, Harrison was suggesting replacing Gwendolen in the maternal role. You deserve a break, sounded in her ears like you're being replaced by the cleaning lady. Hatred rose in Gwendolen's throat like hot bile. Possessive jealousy completely blinded her. She couldn't allow that dinner if Hazel stayed at the house. But she also couldn't refuse the dinner. She needed to eliminate the threat for good. Of course, dear, she said, her voice trembling slightly, masking her hatred. Great idea, call her. I'll go upstairs to get ready. Harrison called Hazel. He offered curt apologies. He offered double the pay. Hazel, on the other end of the line, hesitated but accepted. For the boys. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Hazel entered. Harrison greeted her in the living room, already dressed. Thank you for coming, Hazel. I apologize for the morning's commotion. Gwendolen is very stressed. She's upstairs getting ready. Could you go check on the children? Of course, Mr. Sterling. Hazel climbed the stairs. Her heart felt heavy. She felt that something was wrong. The silence of the house was too heavy. Meanwhile, in the master bath, Gwendolen locked the door. She looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection showed a beautiful, made-up woman, but with the wild eyes of someone who had lost touch with reality. She won't take my place, Gwendolen whispered to the mirror, her teeth clenched. No one takes what's mine. That trailer park princess. That trash. She's leaving here today, and she'll leave in handcuffs forever. Gwendolen opened the makeup drawer with trembling hands. She grabbed a purple, a black, and a yellow eyeshadow. With the skill of someone who understands disguise, she began to paint her own arm, neck, and cheek. She created marks that looked like fight bruises, but it wasn't enough. Harrison needed to believe she had been brutally attacked. It had to be real. It had to have blood. Gwendolen took a deep breath. Madness took over. She started pinching herself with full force, digging her nails into her own skin, on her arms, on her chest. The pain was sharp, but the hatred was greater. She violently slammed her forearm against the edge of the marble sink. Thud. Once. Twice. The bone cracked. Her skin immediately turned red and swelled. Tears of pain welled in her eyes, but she smiled. It was perfect. She messed up her perfectly brushed hair. She tore the collar of her expensive silk blouse, exposing her injured shoulder and her bra. She smudged her mascara with water to make it look like she had cried and struggled. She heard footsteps in the hallway. They were Hazel's light footsteps heading to the nursery. It was time. Gwendolen grabbed a heavy glass vase that decorated the sink. She took a deep breath. She hurled the vase against the large mirror. Crash! The sound of shattering glass was deafening. Shards flew everywhere. Gwendolen threw herself to the floor amidst the glass and let out a scream. It wasn't just any scream. It was a high-pitched, terrifying, guttural scream. The scream of someone being murdered. "Ah! Help! Harrison! She's gone crazy!" Hazel, who was just a few feet away in the hallway, ran towards the master suite, her heart pounding with pure fear. She didn't know what to expect. An accident. A fall in the shower. But the scene her eyes met upon opening the unlocked door was far worse than any domestic accident. It was a war scene meticulously staged by a sick mind. Gwendolen was sprawled on the white marble floor, huddled in the corner between the vanity cabinet and the tempered glass shower enclosure. Around her, absolute chaos. Shards of glass gleamed under the harsh, cold light of the LED fixtures, scattered like deadly diamonds. The enormous mirror, which covered the entire wall, was shattered, a silvery spiderweb with a black hole at its center. And Gwendolen was sobbing, her body trembling violently in a convulsive rhythm. She held her arm tightly to her chest, and Hazel saw, with an electric shock running down her spine, the vivid red on her skin. There were marks. There was swelling. Her thin silk blouse was torn at the shoulder, exposing the strap of her beige bra and more reddened, scratched skin. "Miss Vance!" Hazel exclaimed, paralyzed in the doorway, her instinct to help battling against mental confusion. "What happened? Oh my God!" Upon hearing Hazel's voice, Gwendolen snapped her head up. Her face was streaked with black mascara, creating deep smudges under her wide, panicked eyes that seemed too real to be faked. "No!" Gwendolen shrieked, recoiling against the cold wall, covering her face with her hands as if expecting a fatal blow. "Don't come near me! Get out of here! Help! She's going to kill me!" Hazel took a step back, stunned, raising her hands in surrender. "Me! Ms. Vance, I just got here. I heard the scream from downstairs. I came to help you. Liar!" Gwendolen shrieked, her voice shrill. She fumbled on the counter, grabbed a heavy perfume bottle, and hurled it at Hazel with blind fury. The bottle whizzed past Hazel's ear and shattered against the hallway wall, spreading the scent of jasmine and shards everywhere. "You're crazy! Get away from me!" At that exact moment, the sound of heavy footsteps running down the hallway echoed like approaching thunder. Harrison appeared in the doorway, gasping for breath, his tie undone, his eyes wide with pure terror. He had rushed up the stairs, taking 2 steps at a time, upon hearing the scream of the woman he believed to be the replacement mother of his children. "What is going on here?" Harrison's voice thundered, filling the small powder room, making the air vibrate. The scene that unfolded before his eyes was designed to condemn Hazel without the need for a jury. He saw Gwendolen, the woman who had cared for his home and his children for years, the woman he trusted, thrown to the floor, bleeding, crying, her clothes torn. He saw the shattered mirror. He saw the perfume stain on the wall where the bottle had exploded, and he saw Hazel, the cleaning lady he had known for only a week, standing in the doorway, with her hands extended towards Gwendolen, looking like the aggressor who had just been caught in the act. Gwendolen saw Harrison, and there, in that second, she delivered the performance of her life. She crawled across the floor, ignoring the glass shards that scraped her knees, and extended her trembling hand to him, like a child pleading for help. "Harrison!" she sobbed, her voice broken, pained. "Get her out of here! For God's sake, get her out of here!" She snapped. She went crazy. Harrison ran to Gwendolen, kneeling beside her, not caring about the glass crunching under his dress shoes. He held her face with both hands, shocked by her state of physical destruction. "Gwendolen, my God, look at you. You're bleeding." "Who did this? What happened?" Gwendolen grabbed Harrison's white shirt tightly, staining the fabric with a little blood from her finger, from the cut she had made herself at the sink. She pointed at Hazel with a trembling, accusing finger. "It was her, Harrison! It was her!" Gwendolen cried, burying her face in his chest, trembling. "I was getting ready. She came in here." She had a strange look, Harrison, a look of pure hatred. She started screaming that I was stealing her place, that I wanted to take the boys away from her. Hazel felt the air leave her lungs as if she'd been punched in the stomach. The world spun. Her legs went weak. "What?" Hazel stammered, hot tears of shock beginning to well up. "Mr. Sterling, that's a lie! For heaven's sake, it's a lie! I never—" "I was in the nursery. I came running when I heard the scream." "Shut up!" Harrison roared, turning his face towards Hazel. His eyes, usually tired and kind, were unrecognizable. They were bloodshot with protective fury. He didn't see Hazel. He saw a threat. Gwendolen continued, speaking quickly, stumbling over her words, painting the perfect picture as she sobbed. "She came at me, Harrison. She threw the vase at the mirror to hit me. She tried to choke me. Look." Gwendolen pulled her hair back and showed her neck, where she herself had made red marks with her fingers minutes earlier. "I tried to defend myself. She threw the perfume at me. She said she was going to destroy me and then take the children away. She said the boys are hers." The mention of the children was the final trigger. Harrison's insecurity, the paralyzing fear of losing his sons, the unhealed trauma of his wife's death, all of it erupted in a volcano of irrational protection. He looked at the marks on Gwendolen's neck. They were real. He didn't know they were self-inflicted. He looked at the broken mirror. He looked at the torn blouse. The physical evidence was irrefutable in the eyes of a desperate and manipulated man. Harrison slowly stood up. The atmosphere in the bathroom shifted. From panic, it turned into imminent danger. He rose to his full height. He walked towards Hazel. He was tall, strong. Hazel backed away, hitting her back against the doorframe with nowhere to run. "Mr. Sterling, please, look into my eyes." Hazel pleaded, clasping her hands in prayer, trembling. "You know I wouldn't do this. I love your children. I took care of Colton when he had a fever. I would never hurt anyone. She's lying. She hurt herself to blame me. By herself." Harrison let out a dry, incredulous, terrifying laugh. "Do you think I'm an idiot, Hazel? Do you think I'm going to believe that a woman threw herself against a mirror, tore her own clothes and beat herself up? Look at her condition. Look at her terror. But it's true. She hates me. She said in the mudroom that she was going to destroy me. The only person destroying this family is you," Harrison yelled, spittle flying, his face red. "I gave you a chance. I let you into my home, to care for my children even after you broke into their room at night. I trusted you. I defended you. And this is how you repay me? By trying to kill the woman who raised my children? She doesn't raise them, she tortures them," Hazel yelled back, desperate, trying to make the truth heard amidst the shouting. Caleb's bruises, their hunger. It's her, Harrison. It's all her. She's a monster. Stop saying their names. Harrison roared, getting inches from Hazel's face. Gwendolyn was right. You're sick. You're obsessed. You project your madness onto them. Get out of my sight. Get out of my house. Harrison didn't wait for Hazel to leave. He acted. He grabbed Hazel's arm. It wasn't a punch. It wasn't a shove to hurt her, but it was an iron grip. The firm hold of someone removing a dangerous intruder. Ouch! Mr. Sterling, let go of me, Hazel cried. Let's go, now. Harrison pulled her, dragging her out of the powder room with long strides. You are leaving my house, and you'll thank God if I don't call the police right now. Gwendolyn, still on the floor, watched the scene through the fingers covering her face. A tiny, imperceptible smile curved the corner of her lips as she watched her enemy being dragged like an animal to slaughter. Harrison dragged Hazel down the hallway. She stumbled over her own feet, trying to stay upright, crying, sobbing, pleading for clemency, trying to explain herself. Listen to me. For God's sake, listen to me. Ask the children. They know. They saw the drawing. I will never let you near them again. Harrison snarled without stopping, blind with rage. They reached the top of the stairs, and there they were, Caleb and Colton. The two boys were standing in the middle of the hallway, near the staircase, in flannel pajamas, clutching their teddy bears tightly. They had heard the screams. Their little eyes were wide, terror etched into every muscle of their pale faces. The scene they witnessed confirmed the nightmare. They saw their father, their hero, their protector, dragging Hazel, their angel, the mother they had chosen. They saw Hazel crying, disheveled, being treated like a criminal. And they saw, in the background, emerging from the bathroom, Gwendolyn, the witch. She limped theatrically, clutching her arm, with an expression of suffering victimhood for Harrison to see. But when Gwendolyn's eyes met the children's over Harrison's shoulder, her expression shifted for a split second. She cast a look, a cold, cutting gaze that said, You see, this is what happens to those who defy me. Hazel is done for. You're next. Hazel saw the children. She stopped fighting Harrison's grip. Her heart broke into 1,000 pieces, not because she was being expelled, but because she was leaving them there, alone, with that monster loose. Caleb, Colton, Hazel whispered, her voice failing, extending her free hand to them. Lock the door. Lock the bedroom door and don't open it. Aunt Hazel loves you. Harrison saw that she was speaking to them, and his protective instinct took over. He pulled her, placing his body between Hazel and the children. Don't talk to them, Harrison yelled, startling his own sons, who jumped back, trembling. Let's go. It's over. He led Hazel downstairs. Each step was a death sentence for the hope of that house. Every yard she moved away from the children was a stab to Hazel's chest. Upstairs, the twins stood still. Caleb stepped forward. He opened his mouth. He tried to scream, his neck tensed, veins bulging, but no sound came out. The trauma of 2 years of silence was an iron gag. He wanted to scream, Daddy, no! But only a hoarse breath, a gasp of pain, escaped. They just watched, paralyzed by trauma, as the only light in their lives was extinguished and cast aside. Harrison reached the downstairs. He did not stop in the living room. He went straight to the main door. Outside, the storm had worsened. The sky was black, torn by violet lightning. The rain fell like a solid curtain of icy water, beating against the windows like stones, howling. Harrison pushed open the heavy solid wood door. The wind swept into the living room, wetting the entrance rug, bringing the smell of wet earth and ozone. Get out, Harrison said, releasing Hazel's arm on the veranda. Hazel stumbled from the force and fell to her knees on the cold, wet stone of the veranda. The rain drenched her in seconds. Her grey uniform clung to her body, the icy water mixing with the hot tears that burned her face. Mr. Sterling, don't do this, she sobbed, looking up at him, her hair plastered to her forehead. You are a good man. You love them. Don't let her win. She'll hurt them again. Please look at their arms." Harrison looked at her. There was pain in his eyes. He didn't like this, but the image of Gwendolen bleeding in the powder room was too strong. "I am a good man, Hazel. That's why I didn't call the police, because of your sick mother," Harrison said, his voice harsh, trying to convince himself he was right. "But listen closely. If I see your face near this house again, if you try to call, if you come within 100 yards of my children, I will have no mercy. I will put you in jail. I have lawyers. You will lose everything. Do you understand? Get out of our lives." Hazel couldn't respond. Sobbing choked her. Harrison turned, quickly entered the living room, and grabbed Hazel's old purse that was on the sofa. He came back and threw the purse in her direction. The purse landed in a puddle of water on the veranda. "Go." Harrison pressed the button on the wall that activated the electric garage gate 30 yards away at the front. The hum of the electric motor began. Bzzz. The tall, imposing black iron gate began to slide open slowly, revealing the dark, deserted street under the storm. "The gate is opening," Harrison said, pointing. "Leave." Hazel stood up with difficulty. Her knees were bleeding where they hit the stone. She picked up her wet, heavy bag. She looked inside the house one last time. Through the open door, she saw Gwendolen at the top of the stairs. The villain was smiling, an open, triumphant, diabolical smile. She gave a sarcastic little wave with her good hand. Hazel felt the deepest despair a human being can feel, the despair of condemned innocence. She turned her back and started walking in the rain toward the gate. Each step was heavy, as if she carried lead in her feet. She wasn't just losing a job. She was abandoning 2 children of her heart to the clutches of a monster. Harrison stood on the veranda, watching, his arms crossed to shield himself from the cold and doubt, ensuring the threat was gone. Hazel reached the curb. The gate was fully open. She stepped out. Her feet sank into the dirty runoff that flowed down the gutter. Harrison pressed the button again. Click. The gate began to close. The mechanical hum sounded. The iron grill began to slide back, closing the fortress. Hazel turned around on the street. She gripped the bars of the slowly closing gate. She looked at Harrison through the bars, 30 yards away. "You will regret this," she screamed, her hoarse voice competing with the thunder. "One day you will see, and it will be too late. Take care of them, Harrison. For God's sake, take care of them." Harrison felt a chill. That didn't sound like the scream of a madwoman. It sounded like the cry of a mother. He hesitated, but he shook his head, dismissing the doubt. The gate was halfway closed. The bars approached the post. The gap narrowed. It was at that moment, upstairs in the hallway, something broke inside Caleb. He looked at Gwendolen, who was smiling victoriously. He looked at Colton, who was crying silently, defeated. And then he looked at the open door downstairs, seeing Hazel's small figure disappearing behind the black metal. The memory of the sandwich came back. The memory of her warm hand on his fevered brow. The memory of her voice singing "Precious Little Snowflake" and promising, "I won't leave you alone in the dark." She was the only one who saw the bruises, the only one who gave them food, the only one who loved them. If she left, they would die. Gwendolen would kill them, a little each day in the silence of that room. The fear of death is powerful, but the fear of losing the only person who loves you is greater. It is overwhelming. Caleb let go of Colton's hand. His face turned red. His vocal cords vibrated. He ran. He did not run like a child playing. He ran like someone fleeing a fire. "Ah!" Caleb let out a battle cry, a hoarse sound, tearing from a throat that had not been used in 2 years. Colton, seeing his brother, snapped out of his trance and ran after him. Gwendolen's eyes widened. Her smile vanished. "Hey! Get back here!" she yelled, trying to grab them with her good hand, but they were fast, fueled by pure adrenaline. They ducked under her arm. The twins tumbled down the stairs, stumbling, clutching the banister, nearly falling headfirst in frantic desperation. Harrison was about to close the living room door, turning his back to the rain when he heard the noise. Rapid footsteps, bare feet slapping on the wet wood, thump, thump, thump. He turned around and saw two small figures shoot past him like rockets. They didn't even look at their father. They ran into the rain, into the storm. "Caleb! Colton!" Harrison yelled, confused, taking a step forward. "What? Don't go out! It's raining! Get back here!" But they did not stop. They did not listen. They ran across the wet veranda, slipping. They bounded down the stone steps. The rain soaked their cotton pajamas in seconds, clinging to their thin bodies. The gate was almost closed. Only a half-yard gap remained. Hazel was outside, crying, her head down, already moving away on the curb. "Hazel!" The cry was not from one. It was from two. It was a cry that stopped the storm, a cry that tore through the sky louder than any thunder, a cry of pure pain and love. Hazel stopped. She turned sharply, searching for the source of the impossible sound. She saw. She saw the two boys throw themselves into the closing gate's gap. They did not wait for the sensor. They threw themselves into the empty space. They pushed their little arms through the cold bars. They clung to Hazel's wet clothes, pulling her, holding her with a supernatural strength. Harrison, who had run to the veranda to reach them, froze in the middle of the grounds, the rain soaking his white shirt. He heard. It couldn't be. His mind rejected it. He was hearing voices that hadn't existed for 730 days. Voices he thought he would never hear again. Caleb, his face pressed against the bars, his face wet with rain and tears, looked at Hazel, clinging to her waist, and then turned his head back, searching for his father in the grounds. And then he screamed, his voice faltering, hoarse, pained, but clear as crystal. "Daddy! No! Don't let them!" The word hit Harrison like a cannon shot to the chest. He staggered backward. Colton, clinging to Hazel's leg through the bars, also screamed, sobbing, his body trembling. "Mommy, don't go! Not Hazel! Hazel is good!" Gwendolyn appeared in the doorway of the house, further back, sheltered from the rain. She was pale as a ghost. The charade was over. Her worst nightmare was coming true. The mute ones spoke, and they spoke the truth. Caleb saw Gwendolyn at the door. Fear crossed his face, but Hazel's presence gave him the courage of a lion. He pointed his trembling finger towards the veranda, in the direction where Gwendolyn stood, and he uttered the phrase that would change everything, the phrase that had been stuck in his throat for months, choked by threats and pinches in the dark. "The witch!" Caleb screamed, his eyes full of terror yet firm. "She's the witch! She's going to kill us if Hazel leaves! She hits us, Dad!" The silence that followed the scream was deafening. The world stopped. Only the sound of the falling rain. Harrison stood in the rain, frozen stiff, water streaming down his shocked face. He looked at his sons, screaming with hoarse voices. He looked at Hazel, who was crying, clinging to their little hands through the railing, protecting them. And he looked at Gwendolyn in the background, who for the first time did not have a smile on her face. She was afraid, terrified. The gate stopped closing, blocked by the children, or perhaps because Harrison, in an automatic reflex, pressed the remote in his pocket. The truth was there, stark and raw, shouted by innocent mouths who broke through their trauma to save love. Harrison took a step forward, his legs trembling, his heart nearly leaping from his chest. "What? What did you say?" he whispered, his voice lost in the storm. But Hazel did not wait. She held the boys' hands tightly, kissing their fingers through the gate. She raised her eyes to Harrison with the fury of a lioness. "You heard them, Mr. Sterling!" Hazel cried out. They spoke! Listen to them! For God's sake, listen to your children before it's too late!" Caleb looked at his father, his eyes pleading, and raised his small hand to the gate, opening his palm, showing his wrist. "Daddy, help. Gwendolyn hurts." Right here. He pulled back his wet sleeve. Harrison felt his world crumble beneath his feet. Gwendolyn's perfect lie began to crack, and behind the cracks, the horrifying truth began to leak like blood. He looked towards the veranda. Gwendolyn took a step back, retreating into the shadows of the house. The war had shifted sides, and Harrison's army had just gained 2 small generals who had just found their voices again. Harrison intercepted Gwendolyn in the middle of the grounds. He raised his arm and blocked her path with his chest. "Stop!" Harrison roared. It was not a request. It was a commanding order that made the ground tremble. Gwendolyn hit his chest and stopped, gasping for breath, her wet hair clinging to her face, her smeared makeup running down her eyes like a melting, sad clown's mask. "Harrison, can't you see?" She tried to grab his arm, her nails digging into his wet shirt, desperate to regain control of the narrative. "They're having a psychotic break. This woman poisoned their minds. Look at them, they're hysterical. Bring them inside. I'll take care of them. I have the medicine. I'll make them stop screaming right now." The mention of medicine and making them stop screaming sounded like a death threat in Harrison's ears. He grabbed Gwendolyn's wrists and ripped them from his shirt in disgust, as if her touch were acid. "You don't touch them," Harrison said, his voice low, dangerous, trembling, with a cold fury that was far more terrifying than his previous shouts. "You never lay a finger on my children again." He pushed her back, making her stumble on the wet grass, and turned his back to her. He walked to the gate, ignoring her shouts of, "Harrison, come back here!" Hazel was still there outside, crying, caressing the boys' wet faces through the fence, trying to wipe away the rain with her trembling hands. "Calm down, sweethearts. Calm down. Daddy's here. He saw. He won't let it happen," Hazel whispered, shivering from the cold, from adrenaline, and from the fear that it was all a dream. Harrison came closer. He looked at Caleb. The boy was trembling so much that his teeth chattered audibly. His lip was purple from the cold. "Caleb." Harrison knelt in the mud without caring about his expensive pants. He met his son's gaze. The rain lashed against his back, but he didn't blink. "What did you say? Tell Daddy again. Look me in the eye. Without fear." Caleb let go of Hazel's hand for a second and grabbed the wet lapel of his father's suit jacket, pulling him close, as if he wanted to tell him a secret of life or death. "It wasn't Hazel, Dad," Caleb said, his voice cracking hoarse, the words coming out in fits and starts, rusty from disuse but firm in their truth. "Hazel. Hazel gives us kisses. Hazel gives us bread when we're hungry." Harrison felt a punch to the gut. He couldn't breathe. "Hungry?" he whispered, his voice fading. You go hungry?" "Gwendolyn doesn't give us food if we cry," Colton added, sobbing, the words coming out quickly now that the dam had broken. "She throws our food in the trash. She locks us in the dark. She says we're defective, that we're trash." Harrison closed his eyes for a second, feeling a physical pain in his heart. Guilt was a poison spreading rapidly. "And she hurts us," Caleb said, starting to cry again. "She hurts us where our clothes hide it, Dad, so you won't see." With small, trembling hands, stiff from the cold, Caleb pulled up his soaked pajama shirt. Harrison's world stopped. Time died. Under the weak yellow light of the street lamp and the intermittent flashes of lightning, the child's pale skin on his belly and chest was revealed. It was a map of pain. A diary of torture written on his skin. There was not just one mark, there was a history. There was an archaeology of abuse. There were dark purple bruises, recent from today or yesterday. There were yellowish and greenish bruises, old from weeks ago, fading. There were crescent-shaped nail marks on the side of his ribcage, where no one would see. There was a small healed cut on his shoulder. Colton, seeing his brother, did the same. He pulled up his pajama pants to his groin. On his inner thigh, deep, purple, cruel pinch marks. Harrison looked at it. His brain tried to process it, but it froze. Those marks. They were there yesterday. They were there last week. They were there last month, while he dined out. while he worked late, while he travelled, while he thanked Gwendolen for being so dedicated and gave her Christmas bonuses. He had slept under the same roof as a monster. He had handed his children, the most precious thing he had left, into the hands of a sadist every morning, and had even paid her to torture them. He looked at Hazel's hands red from the cold, calloused from work, that held his children with tenderness. He had called those hands aggressors. The sound of a siren cut through the noise of the rain, bringing Harrison back to the brutal reality. Whoop, 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 whoop. Flashing red and blue lights illuminated the dark driveway, reflecting in the puddles, on the glistening asphalt, and on the wet metal of the gate. The shadows danced, ghostly. The police cruiser, called by neighbours, alarmed by the screams of help and murder that Gwendolen had staged minutes earlier in the powder room. Fate has a cruel sense of irony. The car braked sharply in front of the gate, splashing water to the sides. Officers Miller and Kowalski quickly exited the vehicle, their black raincoats gleaming, hands on their holsters, flashlights cutting through the darkness, alert to a serious domestic violence situation. "Police! What is going on here?" one of the officers yelled, approaching cautiously, hand on his weapon. Gwendolen, who was standing in the middle of the grounds, saw the police. For a second her instinct was to run. But where to? The wall was high. The gate was blocked. She was cornered. Then she played her final trump card. The perfect victim's gambit, the final performance. She ran towards the gate, limping, crying, screaming at the officers with terrifying conviction. "Help! Officer, thank goodness you're here. This woman—" She pointed a trembling finger at Hazel. "She's insane. She broke into my house. She attacked the family. She's trying to kidnap the children. Look what she did to me." She showed her bruised arm, self-inflicted, and torn clothing. The officers surveyed the scene. Visual bias was swift. They saw Gwendolen, a white woman, well-dressed, despite being torn, inside the estate, injured, the lady of the house. They saw Hazel, a poor woman, kneeling on the curb, covered in mud, holding the children through the gate. The perfect profile of a suspect or kidnapper. The officer's logic was quick and flawed. One of the officers drew his handcuffs and advanced toward Hazel with heavy steps. Step away from the children immediately. Hands on your head. Now!" Hazel released the boy's hands, raising her arms, crying in despair, feeling injustice crush her once more. "No, sir, please. I didn't do anything. Listen to him. Listen to the father. Step back! Get back!" the officer yelled, approaching. "No!" Harrison rose from the mud. His cry was so authoritative, so full of power, pain, and fury, that even the officers stopped, surprised. Harrison took the remote from his pocket and pressed the button. The gate finished opening completely, with a hum. He walked to the curb, ignoring the rain. He physically placed himself between the police and Hazel. He placed his hand on Hazel's shoulder, not to push, but to protect. To claim she was under his protection. "Don't touch her," Harrison said, his voice icy, cutting. "Sir?" The officer frowned, confused. "We received a call about assault and attempted homicide. That woman on the veranda says she was attacked and she is not the aggressor," Harrison interrupted, his voice firm. He looked at Hazel, then at Officers Miller and Kowalski. "This woman, Hazel, is the only decent person here. She saved my children." Harrison slowly turned and pointed his index finger toward his property. His finger pointed directly at Gwendolen, who stood in the grounds, her mouth agape, water streaming down her face, watching her castle of lies crumble brick by brick. "That one is the criminal," Harrison said with visceral disgust. "Her name is Miss Vance. She's my former housekeeper. I want you to arrest her now, immediately." "On what charge, sir?" an officer asked, lowering his handcuffs but still alert. Torture! Harrison spat the word. Assault on defenseless minors, unlawful imprisonment, aggravated assault, and filing a false police report. My children... His voice choked. My children have marks all over their bodies, inflicted by her. Gwendolen recoiled, stumbling on the wet grass, her eyes wide. Harrison! Have you lost your mind? I'm the victim. Look at my arm. Look at my face. She hit me. They're lying. Harrison advanced towards Gwendolen. Officers Miller and Kowalski, sensing the shift in dynamics, followed him, illuminating Gwendolen with their flashlights. It's over, Gwendolen, Harrison said, approaching her, looking her in the eyes. They spoke. They broke the silence. They told me everything, about the hunger, about the dark, about the pinches. It's over. Gwendolen froze. The light from the flashlights blinded her eyes. She looked at Harrison. She looked at the children clinging to Hazel. She realized there was no escape now. No more lies could cover it up. Hatred replaced fear in a fraction of a second. Her good girl facade completely shattered, broken on the ground. There was no longer any need to pretend. Her face contorted into a demonic expression of contempt and madness. Those damned brats, Gwendolen hissed, spitting on the ground near Harrison's shoe. I should have pressed that pillow harder when I had the chance. I should have finished them off when they were babies. The shock of the confession made one of the officers react instantly. He grabbed her arm with professional force. You are under arrest, caught in the act. Hands behind your back. Now! Let me go. Gwendolen began to struggle, screaming, hysterical, kicking officers Miller and Kowalski. You don't know who you're dealing with. I am a professional. Those brats deserved it. They are retarded. They don't learn. I tried to educate those beasts. They needed discipline. As she was forcibly handcuffed, with her face pressed against the wet, cold hood of the patrol car, Gwendolen continued to spew her venom, revealing to all the neighbors who were starting to appear in their windows who she truly was. And you, Harrison? She screamed, twisting her neck as she was pushed into the back seat of the car, her eyes glazed with hatred. You are a coward, an absent father. It's your fault. I did what you didn't have the courage to do. I kept order in this house. You should be thanking me. I took care of them when you didn't even want to look at them. The patrol car door slammed shut, muffling her screams, but not the horror of her words that lingered in the rain. The police car pulled away, its lights flashing, taking the darkness away to the precinct. Silence returned to the street. Only the rain fell steady, washing away the grime of that night. Harrison stood still in the middle of the street, watching the patrol car disappear around the corner. He was trembling, not from cold, but from post-traumatic shock. The reality of what he had allowed to happen under his roof weighed tons on his shoulders. Gwendolen's words, "It's your fault," echoed in his head, and they hurt, because there was a kernel of truth to them. He turned slowly. Hazel was on the sidewalk, sitting on the wet curb, hugging the two boys. They were crying, but it was a cry of relief, of tension release, clinging to her neck, smelling her wet hair, seeking security. Harrison felt shame, a deep shame that burned in his gut. He couldn't even look Hazel in the eyes. He, the rich man, the powerful one, had been saved by the woman he had humiliated, but he needed to face it. He walked towards them. His steps were slow, dragging. When he got close, he didn't remain standing. He didn't use his height. There, on the dirty curb, in the rain, in front of his multi-million-dollar estate, Dr. Sterling, the successful businessman, bent his knees. He knelt in the muddy puddle, definitively ruining his clothes, becoming smaller than Hazel, smaller than his children. He lowered his head, covering his face with his large hands, and began to cry. An ugly, hoarse, guttural cry from a broken man who saw his error exposed. "Forgive me," he sobbed, his voice muffled by his hands. "My God, forgive me. I was blind. I was negligent. I abandoned you inside your own home." Caleb and Colton stopped crying when they saw their father like that. They had never seen their father cry. To them, their father was a distant, suited, busy figure. Seeing him there on his knees, vulnerable, broke the last wall of fear that existed between them. Caleb let go of Hazel. He took a hesitant step toward his father. He stretched out his little hand and touched Harrison's wet head. "Daddy," Caleb whispered, "don't cry. The witch is gone. It's over." Harrison lifted his face. Seeing the innocence and forgiveness in the eyes of the son he had failed to protect, he broke down. He pulled both his sons into a desperate, tight embrace, kissing their faces, their hair, their hands mixing his tears with the rain. "I promise," Harrison said, sobbing against his sons' thin chests. "I swear on my life. I promise that never again will anyone hurt you. I will protect you until the day I die. I will be here every day. Forgive me, my sons. Forgive me for being weak." Hazel watched the scene, tears silently streaming, mixed with the rain. She felt a tightness in her chest. Her mission was accomplished. The villain was apprehended. The children were safe and finally connected with their father. She could go. She needed to go. She was fired, after all. Her bag lay in the puddle nearby. She slowly stood up, feeling her legs ache. She picked up her wet bag from the floor. She took a step back, ready to walk to the bus stop in the rain. She didn't belong in that world. "Hazel?" Harrison's voice stopped her. He was still kneeling, clutching the boys, but he had lifted his head and was looking at her. His eyes were red, swollen, but filled with a gratitude and respect that words couldn't capture. "Don't go," Harrison pleaded, his voice failing. "Please, don't leave. Mr. Sterling, Hazel pointed to the dark street. "I need to go. You fired me. I caused a lot of trouble. I was an idiot. I was a blind fool," Harrison said, swallowing hard, slowly standing up, holding his son's hands. "I have no right to ask anything of you after how I treated you today, after dragging you, after humiliating you. I'm ashamed to look at you. But look at them." Caleb and Colton reached out their hands to Hazel, their small, pleading eyes looking up at her. "Stay, Hazel," Colton whispered. "Will you make hot chocolate? They need you, Hazel." Harrison continued humbly, taking off his wet jacket and placing it over her shoulders. I need you. I don't know how to be a father on my own. I don't know how to fix what broke over these past 2 years. You saved their lives. You gave them their voices back. You saw what I didn't see." He took a step forward, holding her calloused hand with both of his. "This house is yours. The job is yours. Double the salary, triple it, official employment with full benefits, health insurance for your mother, whatever you want. Just, please don't leave us alone. Teach us how to be a family." Hazel looked at that powerful man, now broken and rebuilt by the truth. She looked at those children who gazed at her as if she were the sun on a winter morning. She dropped her bag to the floor. She smiled, a tired, trembling smile, yet full of love. "You don't need to double it, Harrison," she said softly, using his first name for the first time without a title. "But I'll need dry towels, lots of towels, and plenty of hot chocolate and cheese bread for these boys because they are starving." She knelt down and opened her arms. The boys ran to her. Harrison, hesitating for a second, enveloped all three in a protective embrace. The four stood there, in the rain that was beginning to subside, united not by blood, but by survival and the love that conquered fear. The estate was unrecognizable, not in its structure, but in its soul. The windows, once always closed with heavy curtains, were wide open, letting the golden light of the afternoon sun stream in and wash over every corner. In the grounds, where before there was only immaculate lawn and graveyard silence, now lay a bicycle tossed aside, a soccer ball stained with dirt, and child and dog footprints in the soft earth. Yes, there was a dog now, a scruffy mutt running and barking. In the kitchen, the scent was no longer of cold, artificial lavender. It was the smell of life, the smell of cornmeal cake with fennel baking in the oven. Hazel was at the stove, humming "Precious Little Snowflake." She no longer wore the sad grey uniform. She wore a floral dress, simple yet beautiful and colourful. Her hair was down. She still took care of the house, still took care of everything, but now she was more than an employee. She was the beating heart of that home. "Hazel, Hazel, look what I did!" Caleb ran into the kitchen, holding a piece of paper, his cheeks flushed from playing in the sun. He spoke loudly, clearly, without stuttering. His voice had fully returned, and with it the boisterous joy of a 5-year-old. He showed her the drawing. There were no more black monsters. There were no more blue tears. There were no claws. The drawing, made with vibrant colours, showed 4 stick figures holding hands under a giant yellow sun that took up half the page. One large figure, Harrison, a figure with long hair and a floral dress, Hazel, and 2 small figures, all smiling, and the dog. "How beautiful, my love." Hazel knelt down, turned off the stove, and kissed his sweaty forehead. "Who are these people?" "It's our family," Caleb said with absolute naturalness. "And Buster." Harrison entered the kitchen at that moment. He looked 10 years younger. The deep circles under his eyes were gone. His grey suit had been replaced by a relaxed polo shirt. He carried a bouquet of wildflowers, simple daisies and sunflowers picked from the garden. He stopped at the door, listening to his son say, "Our family." He looked at Hazel. His gaze was no longer that of an employer, nor merely one of gratitude. It was the look of a man who, day after day, coffee after coffee, conversation after conversation, was falling hopelessly in love with the woman who had saved his children and saved him from himself. "The cake smells wonderful," Harrison said, smiling, handing the flowers to Hazel. "Thank you, Hazel, for everything. For today. For yesterday." Hazel took the flowers, blushing slightly, her smile lighting up her face. "Oh, and I have some news," Harrison said, winking at the boys. "Mr. Abernathy called. Gwendolyn was sentenced today, 30 years. No parole eligibility for now. It's finally over." Hazel sighed in relief. The last ghost was gone. Colton ran in, covered in dirt up to his neck. "Is the cake ready? Dad said he'd take us to the playground to fly kites. Let's go, Mum." "I mean, Hazel!" The child's Freudian slip made silence hang in the kitchen for a second. Colton put his hand over his mouth, embarrassed, looking at his father and Hazel. But no one scolded him. No one corrected him. Harrison smiled and looked at Hazel, as if asking for permission and extending a silent invitation for the future. Hazel smiled, her eyes welling up with happiness. She ruffled Colton's hair. "Yes, let's go, my dear. We'll all go together, because family sticks together." The camera slowly pulls back, exiting through the kitchen window, showing the family leaving through the front door, hand in hand, under the warm afternoon sun. The gate, that same iron gate that almost separated their fates on that rainy night, was now wide open, free, rusting on its hinges from always being open. The house was no longer a luxurious tomb. It was a home full of noise, mess, and love. Did you enjoy this story? Do you think Gwendolyn got what she deserved, or was it not enough? Let me know in the comments. Until the next story.